Biden home alone. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now leave it to Joe Biden. 1 year into his presidency, and he's already made himself a lame duck. So he's paddling around by himself, and his pond is now just a muddy puddle. And it's not just Republican governors ignoring him. Members of his own party don't want him around either.
Would you like the president to come and campaign with you?
This campaign in Texas is not going to be about Joe Biden. It's not going to be about Donald Trump. It's not going to be about anyone from outside of our state.
Does that mean that you would prefer that he not come?
It means that I'm focused on Texas and on my fellow Texans.
But the stiffest of stiff arms came courtesy of Stacey Abrams, who refused to appear at Biden's voting rights speech in Atlanta last month. That's her big issue, by the way. And we never did find out what Abrams' scheduling conflict was. Well, the truth is, Biden is human kryptonite for anyone hoping to win politically. Even the dullest Democrat knives in the drawer know that Biden is clueless on stopping the biggest issue facing us now, which is inflation. Now, I woke up this morning and listening to the news, I thought I was living in a 1979 time warp.
The latest inflation number is out, and it shows the biggest jump in prices in 40 years.
The expectations were already very high, and the reality was worse than expected.
I don't see much relief, at least in the next several months.
No relief in sight. But wait a second. I thought Biden was going to promise us the D word.
I'm going to stay in my message. I've started off saying we have to restore the dignity and honor of the office and the soul of this country to gain respect in the country and around the world.
But there's no dignity in what his inept team has done to America. Crippling COVID mandates, racist appeals disguised as diversity and equity, millions of illegals, and just for good measure, skyrocketing living costs. But don't worry, because when you're in a debt hole, you should borrow and spend more, right?
Inflation is up. It's up. And coming from a family, the fact is that if we are able to do the things I'm talking about here, it'll bring down the cost for average families. Bring down the cost for average families. In my Build Back Better legislation, we can do that. There's a lot we can do to give families extra breathing room. We can do this.
Absurd on its face. Biden's plan to borrow or print and then spend more money that we don't have, will only stoke more inflation. Now, this is all very obvious. It's kind of Econ 101, which I think Joe's top advisors apparently just slept through.
We have historically strong economic growth. In January, we now see that real wages, after adjusting for inflation, were up.
There is some light in this report under the hood. I expect inflation to come down significantly in 2022. Consider
the source. They're the same group who last year predicted only short-term inflation. Remember that? Now, if Biden had really wanted to help the economy, he would have immediately ended all COVID mandates. He would have opened everything up. And he would have told the nation, it's time. He'll do it like this, right? It's time to go back to work, including the federal government. Got to go back to work. But he's not going to say that. Instead, he likes to pull what we call the Biden and switch.
I'm asking the American people to mask up for the first 100 days.
100 days of masking. Right. Well, if you were watching The Angle, you would have known that when Biden said 100 days of masking, he really meant 100 years of masking. Soon, Americans were on to his little game, though. They saw that Florida and South Dakota, which went virtually maskless the entire pandemic, were no worse off than universally masked New York and Illinois. In fact, Floridians and South Dakotans, they even seemed happier, a lot happier than the mandate states. Thus, with the midterms around the corner, it's not surprising that state mask mandates are dropping faster than Lizzo's clothes. They can't afford to wait until Biden sees the light on these COVID mandates, especially when this woman runs the CDC.
Now our CDC guidance has not changed. Continue to recommend universal masking in our schools.
Although infuriating, this defiance is a huge gift to Republicans. Just look at Biden's approval ratings. A new CNN poll puts Biden's overall approval at 41%, 58% disapprove. Now, of those who disapprove, 56% said they approve of nothing, I repeat, nothing that Biden has done while in office. Biden's fast and dramatic slide downward explains why McConnell is now totally comfortable just telling Republican governors to ignore altogether the Biden administration's guidance on how to spend that infrastructure money they're going to get. In other words, ditch the bike lanes, fix the bridges. And how happy are Manchin and Sinema that they didn't buckle on that voting rights bill now? Pelosi's media bullies turned up the pressure campaign on them, but the senators resisted. And then they were trashed by the left. They didn't care. But they obviously made the right call. As for the other senators who bill themselves as reasonable moderates, but who've never spoken out, they're desperately trying to play catch up now.
The national Democratic brand in I think in rural America generally is toxic. And it's because, quite frankly, we don't show up. We're not willing to go places we're not wanted and answer questions. I honestly don't think the Democratic Party can be a majority party unless we start appealing to middle America a lot more.
You think, John? It's a little late. Where were you last spring, last summer, and last fall? Does he think Montanans are stupid? They know a phony when they see one. They tuned out Biden, and they're going to tune out Tester as well. But the abandonment of Biden isn't just happening on the home front, of course. Our allies are also moving on from him. Just recently, French President Emmanuel Macron decided to bypass the bumbling Biden altogether and then go on to have his own meeting with Vladimir Putin to defuse the Ukraine situation. It's obvious what happened here. European leaders saw Biden as a problem, not a solution, kind of a bull in a china shop, or Biden in a china shop. So they felt that they had to rush in to de-escalate. How embarrassing for America, getting briefed and ordered around by the French? But not any more embarrassing than America being left in the dust by the Chinese. Under Biden, our overall trade deficit ballooned to an all-time high. This is shocking. $859 billion. That's a 27% increase from the year before. President Biden might not know how to make Americans happy, but the Chinese, they got to love him because the trade deficit with China grew 14.5% for the full year to $355 billion, reversing the decline that followed then-President Donald Trump's policies aimed at reducing the deficit with tariffs and purchase targets. By the way, Biden's team wants to get rid of all the tariffs, too. This is as despicable as it is as heartbreaking. Now, all because we have a president that no one trusts or respects to stand up for the average American. President Xi knows that Biden is easily rolled or just easily ignored altogether. Ditto with his military men, Secretary Austin and General Milley, for whom I don't think China or probably Putin have much respect for. To them, woke is a joke. In the U.S. military, sadly, under this leadership, great men and women are pushed to go woke. So Democrats, they made a terrible choice in Joe Biden. His hologram campaign has become a hologram presidency. And when he does appear in public, I put appear in quotes, he has no presence, he has no credibility, and he has little influence. Now, given all this, maybe he should just stay home alone for the next 3 years and let Nancy run things for a while. Oh, on second thought, and that's the angle.